In life, we have a choice. Do we want to be a victim to life, or do we want to be a sovereign co-creator with life? And when we receive intuitive information, when we receive psychic information, if we don't act upon it, we start to create drama in our life, resistances to the information that we're receiving. And then we say, oh, I'm not receiving information. I'm not seeing, hearing, or connecting with my guides. It's like, what are you afraid of? What do you not want to take action on? That's why people resist their intuition or their higher self embodiment.
Hi, I'm Sahara Rose, and this is the Highest Self Podcast, a place where we discuss what makes you your soul's highest evolvement. If it's your first time listening, one of my favorite things to do on this podcast is to go deep into spiritual topics that include the sacred feminine. I'm talking about a more embodied and grounded and integrative approach to spirituality that is not just about ascending and leaving the human experience, but rather being so immersed in this body and this beauty and this womb and the earth. And that, to me, is what my highest self feels like. So welcome. I'm grateful to have you here. And this episode is a deep and profound and really introspective one, because I actually read the person who you're about to hear's book years ago, and it is extremely dense with just the layers of true channeling that she shares from the goddesses. So if you have not heard about the Sophia Code, it is a movement now. It is the direct transmission that Kaia Ra, who you're going to hear today, received from various goddesses. And it has created a global movement because so many people have really resonated with these words and they have really rang true for them. So in this episode, we talked to Kaia about what was her process like. I ask her questions such as, when did you begin channeling the goddesses? What was your process like? What were you doing in your life to help it come through? What is this Sofia Christ consciousness that she speaks about? How can we move from separating often harmful Catholic teachings from Christ consciousness? Then we really dive deep into Mary Magdalene, as there is a huge Mary Magdalene awakening happening right now. And she shares with us how her story has actually been distorted by the church. And she is not the whore, the prostitute that they call her to be, but rather she also, like Yeshua, Jesus, is an ascended master. And then what is so special about this episode is she channels Mary Magdalene for us. And she goes into that consciousness, and I am able to ask Mary Magdalene questions through her that you will be able to sit with. So you're going to feel the energy as you listen to this. It is such a unique and incredible opportunity to literally interview someone channeling a goddess in front of you, and you guys get to be in on it. So without further ado, let's welcome Kaia Ra to the Highest Self Podcast. And before we get started, I'd love to share with you this special offer. So have you been on your spiritual journey for a while, but to be honest, you don't resonate with a lot of the practices, like hours of seated meditation or reading all these really heady spiritual books, but instead you're craving something that invites the full you, that allows you to be radiant and beautiful and connecting with your intuition and womb wisdom? Well, I felt the exact same way on my spiritual journey. I went from spending hours doing really rigid Ashtanga yoga every year, where I actually lost my period for over 2 years and even went into perimenopause in my early 20s, into connecting back with my sacred feminine energy. And this is exactly what I share in my new course, Divine Feminine Embodiment. So this is really about dropping out of the mind and into the body, because the truth is a lot of the spiritual practice that we hear about right now really were created by men for men. And our culture is very masculine as well. It's very focused on productivity and hustle. And if you're ready to go beyond that and reclaiming your ease, your joy, your bliss, bliss, your juiciness, your dance, then this course is for you. So I discuss the different art forms of divine feminine wisdom, such as the art of magnetism, the art of embodiment, the art of ritual, and so much more. So this is also a really powerful entry point into stepping into deeper sacred feminine work. I teach you my goddess embodiment practice, my goddess breathwork practice, and much more. So if you're interested and curious to learn more about what's inside, head over to divinefemininecourse.com. Again, that's divinefemininecourse.com. You can find that link in the show notes. This month, the course is over 50% off as our special introductory price. So I highly recommend diving into it right now and beginning your sacred feminine immersion. Well, welcome, Kaia, to the Highest Self podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here, Sahara. Thanks for inviting me.
And doing this in person, feeling the flow, feeling the juice. And the first question I'd love to ask you is, what makes you your highest self?
What makes you your highest self? Well, you already are your higher self. Your humanity, your human body is an emanation of your higher self. So in the Sophia Code, what we teach is that we're on a journey of merging our human awareness back into the light of our higher self. So it's really just about remembering who you already are and choosing to never look away from that again.
Yeah, so beautifully stated. And I know for you, your journey has been transformative. And you are, channeling these goddesses and ascended masters and high beings. However, it didn't start that way for you. So can you share a little bit about where your journey began and how your pain really shifted you into your purpose?
Yeah. So I actually was channeling from the earliest memories I have. It's actually these beings that really kept me alive through a lot of the abuse and atrocities that I survived as a survivor of human trafficking, and much more than that as well, that I won't go into at this moment. But it was actually my ability to channel that saved my life. Because when you are constantly in life or death situations, you learn to rely on your higher senses to survive, or you're not going to survive. And fortunately for me, I came in with a team of spiritual guides that were a part of the mission that I'm on. But it's both an advocacy mission as well as a spiritual mission. They're really one and the same. And it was my guardian angels, my star family, the ascended masters, these different angelic beings that were all there with me in those experiences, because I chose to come into this lifetime. I know in all of my heart I didn't have to come in to have these experiences. I chose to come and have these experiences and to prove that, as a microcosm of the macrocosm, that humanity can truly move from a slave mindset into a sovereign embodiment, body, heart, and mind. And so it wasn't just me. That's the reason why I survived, is because it was a team of beings that I was directly interfacing with in between everything else I was surviving.
So did you know at the time these are goddesses, these are beings, or did it just come through like the voice of your own intuition? Like, how did you create that discernment?
Well, I mean, it was a really extreme and unusual circumstance where I lived most of my first half of my life outside of my body in the spirit world. So there was very little of me in my body. So getting to know these beings in the higher realms was pretty full on, because I wasn't going to spend a whole lot of time in my body consciously as I was surviving those things. So, even as a child, I could identify their names. I could identify some of their different faces. A lot of times there was just so many angels that they just looked like beings of light. And then the faces that I would recognize the most would be Jesus or Mother Mary. Surprisingly, Green Tara. was a very big part of. I have memories of receiving some of the teachings from the Sophia Code when I was like 3 or 4 from her. And I didn't fully remember that until I was channeling the Sophia Code, and I would flash back to memories as a child speaking to her as I was rechanneling them. I was like, I've already heard this. And then I would remember, oh yeah, that was that moment when she appeared, and, you know, my body was out, but my spirit was talking to Torah. So, what was part of what I was surviving was being used. It was a program for psychic children that was being trained to be used for, nefarious purposes. And yet there was always a part of my heart and my soul that knew I was going to survive. I knew I was going to go on to overcome and help as many people as I possibly could, because I would receive visions from the future that would reassure me, even in the darkest of times, that I was going to get through, and that these beings were going to be a part of how I got through. And it was out of my immense gratitude for all of these ascended masters and angels, archangels, and star nations as well, that would come to me, help put me back together emotionally, psychologically, even physically. It was just so much gratitude for them. I really wanted to give back to them later in my life, and to reveal to others, like, okay, I get it. Not everybody has that kind of level of extreme psychic experiences to know for certain that it's real, but I can assure you, through the fact that I'm still alive, like, it is real. Whether you can hear them the way I listen to them or see them, like, they're there. And they're ready to help you. And that brings me great peace to know that I can speak with great confidence and certainty, that they're here to support us, because we're all going through so much this time. And to be reassured of that, it's really helpful, I think, for people.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And how do we know when it's the voice of a goddess or witch angel, versus like just some guidance that we might be receiving from our highest selves? Or like, how do we know where it's coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the easiest ways to identify, if you are in a really sovereign space, a lot of people, they're still figuring out what that means. And so in the Sophia Code Mystery School, we teach a circle of sovereign empowerment. And so we call in a circle of light, and in the 8 directions, we place the 8 revealed key codes, who are all sovereign masters of light, that help create the space within your circle for you to feel yourself. That's the first step. You got to clear the space. A lot of people are letting ancestors hijack them, even their relationship with their parents or their children. And or even spiritual guides can be overbearing. And so if you call in that circle of light, say, I want to get in a sovereign, clear space, especially with the support of these particular ascended masters, what happens is 2 things. You can identify when your higher self is speaking to you, because it will feel internal. You'll hear or feel the sensations in your heart or in your throat area. You might hear it in your ear chakras, in your third eye, but very often what I have found from myself is that, and it's different for me because how I see them and interact with them, but for most people, I feel as though if you feel as though the information is coming from somewhere outside of you, like someone's speaking to you over your shoulder, or even speaking into your throat, or even from across the room, or there's a sensation like a wind, like a breeze coming over you, and you get a yes from the universe. It's like, that's guidance coming from outside of you. When you sit down and you meditate and you pray and you feel this, Mother Mary talks about this in the Sophia Code, your voice will actually speak to you. The voice of your heart will actually speak to you. And that just takes some stillness, that takes some quieting. And a lot of people have resistances to slowing down. But if you really want to know the difference, you want to start to decipher what is yours and what is someone else's. Because spiritual guides have their own perspective. Some of them have their own agenda. And so if you really want to know what's in alignment, your highest alignment, you would call in your higher self. You get really grounded in your heart center. And you would ask for them to speak to your higher self. And anything that's really meant for you from that your higher self approves of will be then downloaded into your heart per your higher self's approval. And that's how we work with channeling in the Sophia Code. Everything has to be filtered through your own sovereign divinity. Everything has to be filtered through your higher self. And everyone needs to talk one person at a time. Like guides sometimes will try to outshout each other and compete with one another. It really depends on what kind of guides you're working with. And your higher self has the ability to sort it all out. That requires us taking more responsibility for the conversation that's unfolding.
And do you think that also, like, by the type of information that you're getting, you can kind of tell who it's coming from?
Right. So the signature, right? So what I suggest is if you know in your heart there is a guide you want to go deeper with, having an image on your altar or a statue, or even a written intention of like, I am going to receive information from Ascended Master Isis, right? And you build an Isis altar or some kind of...
She's right behind you.
I was really feeling her. Yeah. I've been working with her so strongly all week. It's like when you create a space in your home or your office is consecrated to that conversation, then you can start to, and we teach about this in our Stargate 1 curriculum, over time you build a relationship with that master of light. So then you start to get to know their signature resonance. You might even start to see them. You might even start to identify, oh, this is what the voice of Isis sounds like versus Kuan Yin. Oh, Kuan Yin has this softer, it's firm, but it's softer. Isis can sometimes, it's beautiful, it's feminine, but sometimes it feels like a sword, right? And so feeling our way into their signature is often how people first start to identify the difference between their guides. And the more that you appreciate and acknowledge that clairsentience, right, feeling psychic information is information. You are learning, you're getting to know your guide. Then that muscle gets stronger and you start to hear them. You start to hear the resonance of their voice. Then that muscle gets stronger and like, oh, if I can feel and hear, what would it be like if I looked at how beautiful she is? What if I felt worthy enough to see her smiling at me in her radiance filled with divine love? Like a lot of people don't see for two reasons. Number one, they don't think they're worthy of seeing such beauty and grace, even though it is our divine birthright, or God wouldn't have given us our psychic senses, which everyone has. And the second reason is because when you see, when you hear, you are responsible for that information. And so in life, we have a choice. Do we want to be a victim to life, or do we want to be a sovereign co-creator with life? And when we receive intuitive information, when we receive psychic information, if we don't act upon it, we start to create drama in our life, resistances to the information that we're receiving. And then we say, oh, I'm not receiving information. I'm not seeing, hearing, or connecting with my guides. It's like, what are you afraid of? What do you not want to take action on? That's why people resist their intuition or their higher self embodiment.
Beautiful. So if someone wants to work with a deity, would you suggest that they look up that the image that, you know, most notably resembles them, or find their own way of seeing them?
I mean, I feel like it's so unique to every person based on their previous lifetimes of intuitive and psychic development. So I think it's a great question to ask yourself, for any of your listeners to ask themselves, like, well, how do I learn best? Is it visual? Is it audible? Is it, you know, if I wanted to connect with Isis, would a trip to a local art museum where there's some Egyptian artifacts inspire something for me. I'm a very visual person, so I have statues and paintings and altars like all over my home, and it helps me stay honest with my practice. But if someone is more audible, I think, like listening to Tibetan music, or Tibetan chanting, like that will connect you with the dakinis and green tar right away, whether you're looking at a tanka or not. Like you're going to go into that resonance. So I think it really depends on which guide that you want to connect with, and also what is your unique intuitive learning style, and to honor that.
I love that. So, I love the Sophia Code, and you speak about Sofia Christ consciousness.
Yes.
And I know for a lot of people, when they hear the word Christ, they think of organized religion in that way that we are taught about Christ, in different churches. And for some people, that word can even be triggering.
Enormously triggering.
So what is kind of the difference between Christ consciousness versus organized religion?
That's such a great question. Thank you for asking it. When the Sophia Dragon Tribe asked me to start using the words Christ consciousness in the Sophia Code, I was like, no, really? You want me to do what? Please don't make me.
Yeah.
Not that they would make me, but they were pretty.
It's a loaded
gun word for sure. And I knew it was gonna create a lot of division. But ironically, the purpose of the Ascended Masters asking me to use that word was to unify multiple lineages. And in the Sophia Code, we consider Christ consciousness to be absolutely synonymous with Source consciousness, Buddha consciousness, unity consciousness. So what does that mean? It means we're returning back to the original source teachings in the Sophia Code from the perspective of each of these divine feminine masters. And all of their teachings have been in some way manipulated, co-opted, used against women, against the feminine, because the feminine is within all of us. And so that's what we're doing with the words Christ consciousness. But there's also something else that's happening there. And in the Sophia Code, the Sophia Dragon Tribe talk about, actually it was in Green Tara's chapter, where we talk about what is the meaning of the Christ. And the Christ is form. It is physical form that emanates out of divine consciousness. So everything is the Christ. And if we all treated one another and this planet as the Christed beings that we are, divine beings having a physical experience, like that's a miracle. That is a holy miracle. And the Sophia Code for over 300 pages declares that miracle, that everything is holy, everything is divine. And it's only when we turn away from it that things go sideways and gets twisted. And so that word Christ consciousness returns us back to, Jesus is not the Catholic Church. The church is the church. The church is a doctrine that was used to develop the Roman Empire. It was literally co-opted from a messianic lineage. And by the way, there are multiple messianic lineages all over the world. If you look close enough, one of which was White Buffalo Woman's lineage. She was literally a messianic figure if you look closely at the teachings. And that's when things really started to click for me, that if we were to take back this word, Christ consciousness, we would be taking back our power. And there's just so much radical power in that word for us. And I feel like we're just getting started as a movement to see what the effect of teaching Sophia Christ consciousness can have upon thousands of people. And I'm really curious what's going to happen when like millions upon millions of people decide they want to explore what that consciousness really means for them in this lifetime.
And for you, it came through as the Sophia, as the voice of the feminine. So can you speak a little bit about how the Sophia was basically edited out of the books and out of the stories, and, just the way that we have been mistaught, and also weaving in Mary Magdalene and how her story has been co-opted and used against her.
1,000,000% co-opted.
And now there is this beautiful return of the Magdalene. So for people who maybe they grew up, Christian, and they grew up hearing these stories, how can they begin to learn the true history of what happened, the herstory of what happened?
Well, the Sophia Code is a great place to start.
Yes.
Because it's, every single word of it is channeled. It took me 7 years to channel it. It rewrote me to actually attempt anything like that. And Sophia in the Sophia Code is the source. It's source consciousness. And source can show up to you through a feminine voice. Source can show up to you and be the Holy Father, Holy Mother. Source can show up and have absolutely no gender identity at all. The source is the source. And it's the light and it's the nothingness. It's the vast space of no thing. And so when that consciousness, which I had been in contact with many times, but this way was very different. What happened in an evening in Mount Shasta, California, it showed up as the thunderous voice of God, and God was speaking to me as a woman, and it sounded like lightning.
And you were meditating during this? Like, how did it show up?
I shared about it in the preface of the Sophia Code. I went to Mount Shasta. I rented a house. I had a message from the Ascended Masters to go temporarily live in Mount Shasta and to start working on channeling a book. Mm-hmm. And they said, whatever you do, you have to be consistent. Do the same thing every day. And it was like a real, chop wood, carry water kind of experience. And so I did exactly what they told me to do every day. I would make my breakfast at the same time. I'd work out at the same time. I would do my walk, and then I would get ready to channel, and then in break, dinner, do the same thing, make the fire, feed the cat. It was all the same thing. And about a month into this, finished washing the dishes, went to sit in the living room to do the next round of writing, and everything melted down. I watched the wood beams turn into atoms. There was no medicine involved. There was nothing hallucinogenic. I just finished washing the dishes, and I don't need any kind of medicine to channel. So it was pretty wild. The whole house just disappeared before my eyes. The only thing that was left was me and the laptop sitting in my lap. And I was in the light, and that's when the voice of Sophia came, and it sounded like lightning. And it was very hard for me to handle it because it was so loud. It was almost unbearable. And I begged her to turn the volume and the light down a little bit, respectfully. But I was like, I'm just a human being, have mercy. Not that it was mean. It was just are you paying attention? I am the mother of all life. Are you listening to me? And I was like, I am listening. At first I didn't even understand. I had never met the voice of Sophia. So my first question to her was are you the great goddess of wisdom? But there was no face, there was no body, there was no deity. It was just the light and the lightning. And she was like, no, I am the one divine mother of all life. Are you listening to me? And I was like, you absolutely have my full attention, but you have to turn the volume and the lights down a little bit because this is unbearable. And as she did, it went from white light to white light and gold. And out of the gold light emerged thousands of ascended masters, from so many different races of beings and parts of the universe. And there was a few of them that stepped forward that were very familiar to me because they had been mentoring me for years. And those are the ones that are featured in the first book of the Sophia Code, the introductory volume of this. It's a series. And that's when Sophia asked me to write the Sophia Code. And she said it would be a love letter to humanity, declaring the sovereign divinity of humanity, and that it would be a part of activating the divine genome of humanity, which we talk about in chapter 2. And that these mentors, these ascended masters, were committing to mentor humanity back into its sovereignty. I at the time it was, I mean, how do you say no? I mean, they were asking me, but it was just like, I was so overwhelmed. I was like, I say yes to the mission, and the frequency and the resonance was so high, and I was still healing from so much trauma. I could barely maintain a channeled state. I'd been channeling for years, but it was nothing compared to meeting the Sophia Dragon Tribe. It was just like, oh, I just found my life work. Okay. Or it found me. And so and then over the course of channeling the Sophia Code, every time I went to channel Sophia, it's like, it's channeling the consciousness that gave birth to all life. All it is it's the light, and it is the void. It is the mother consciousness that, it's so multifaceted. I think in spirituality, we like to compartmentalize, makes things really safe, like, oh, Divine Mother is safe. Like in this way, it's like, yeah, and Divine Mother has teeth too. She will fiercely defend her creation, like Sekhmet or Kali Ma. It's like all divine virtues are aspects of Sophia, but Sophia in the Sophia Code is not a deity. She's not an ascended master. She is one name for the one Divine Mother of all life. And as we know, Divine Mother has many names.
Can anyone connect with her?
Absolutely. This is our one Divine Mother of all life. Yeah. I just happen to be in enough excruciating pain in my own life that my willingness to listen that closely, I guess, is what resulted in us receiving the Sophia Code.
I know this episode is good, but so is this sponsor. I am so excited to share with you an incredible Ayurvedic skincare product called Sahara. So there are tons of different skincare products out there, but the thing is, most of them are not formulated with Ayurvedic principles. And if you're not aware of Ayurveda, it's the sister science of yoga based on the mind-body connection, which I am an expert in and a huge advocate of. So Lisa, who was recently on the podcast, her family's from Kerala, and she's also worked in pharma for many years. So she's merged science with Ayurvedic research to come together to create clinically proven and holistic Ayurvedic skincare products. I personally love the cleansing oil. It's so good at taking makeup off, dirt, SPF, as well as the ritual body oil for Abhyanga self-oil massage and the radiant serum for my glow. It has Triphala and Brahmi, which is so great for the skin. So if you want to try it for 20% off, head over to sahajin.com. That's spelled SAHAJAN.com. And you can use coupon code Sahara for 20% off and find that link in the show notes. So right now, with just, everything happening in the world, like politically, socially, what is the Sophia calling us as women to stand forth and do? What does she want us to be focusing our energy on? Does she want us to be like deep in the politics or holding the high vibration? You just hear so many different perspectives. Yeah. So I'm curious what she's told you, or if it's very just individual.
I want to be really careful here because there are billions of souls on the planet, and every soul has such a unique purpose. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people have profound spiritual purposes in unexpected career choices or unexpected fields of interest. What I will say is that Sophia is calling us to sovereignty. Sophia is calling us to self-love. Sophia is calling us to the sacred and to take a stand for the sacred. Sophia is calling us to reclaim our hearts and to wake up out of the programmed lies and conditioning that we have been literally punishing ourselves with for centuries. She wants us to set ourselves free from the very slavery that we agree to every day, because we are divine beings. We are her children. We were born sovereign, divine, holy, and free. But then we temporarily hand over all of that to people, the institutions outside of ourselves. And we are being called to create beyond anything that's ever been created up until this point. And I think for a lot of people, that's so much unknown. And that's asking for like all of our potential to come online, not just part of our potential, like to create in ways we've been waiting lifetimes for. What happens is when you get called to such an angelic mission, we're being asked to not only create beyond anything we could imagine, but to also heal lifetimes of pain and suffering, both from living on this planet and others where we have given away our power. And so I think that's why a lot of light workers feel so overwhelmed in this lifetime, because we're being guided to heal from the old paradigm while birthing a new sovereign paradigm simultaneously. I feel as though from my years of counseling and serving, it feels as though a lot of light workers feel as though those are separate. Mm-hmm. Like once I'm healed up enough, I'll be able to, serve, lead, create something new. And it's like, it's actually hand in hand. Because everything that we are empowering ourselves beyond healing, in real time is the medicine for others to step more deeply into their sovereignty. Mm-hmm. It's authentic, it's genuine. We're all healing from matrix programming right now. Mm-hmm. All of us. It doesn't matter how successful you are. Mm. It's that's what we're being called to.
Absolutely. And I think healing is just such a never ending trajectory that we're always going to be on. There's always going to be deeper levels. And sometimes we can use it as a way to just eradicate the responsibility of sharing our gifts and being of service of, I still have more healing to do. I still need to heal this. And it's like a way of keeping us playing small. And then oftentimes like the world leaders who never think about healing are just like doing in an unhealed way.
Yes.
And so we see this like huge polarity of most spiritual people are not involved in politics and social change. And then the people who are have zero healing. So we need these worlds to collide and come together. So a question that I've been really sitting with, and I'm curious the Sophia's perspective on is the unpredictable nature of life. Ooh. And how just so many things happen and our human, consciousness tries to give it a reason. And I catch myself doing this of like, was it my karma? Was it a soul contract? Was it a past life lesson? Was it this? Was it that? And then I wonder with just like the chaotic realm that is also the feminine, of like, is it also just like life and it just happens? Or would the Sophia say there is causation around everything that happens?
What's interesting about this question is it kind of goes back to that question. I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times where you're serving and someone, a client or a community, be like, so am I ever going to finish healing? Mm-hmm. Like it's something to get out of, right? Like it isn't the spiritual gold mine that it is. And I think it's the same thing with our experience of form. Mm-hmm. It's like everything is here to serve us. So even when things feel random or chaotic, it's like, I think the best approach is to just continue to be curious. Mm-hmm. And because life is creating with us. And anything that feels off or strange, it's always a calling to how clear we want to become. Mm-hmm. And so at this point in my journey, I don't believe in anything random anymore at all. Mm-hmm. At all. At all. And I like it that way. Mm-hmm. Because it reassures me every day that I am the creator of my reality. And it's a constant like barometer for me of like, am I in my heart today? Mm-hmm. Am I leaning into my guides? Am I invoking Sophia Source to guide my way? And even if something comes up that's uncomfortable, like, what am I going to learn from this today? Mm-hmm. Sometimes, yeah, I want to get to the bottom of it. It's just past life related. Like, does this have to do with, another time, another place? Other times I just don't feel like I have to name it, to just know that love is here. Everything here is for me. It's not against me, even if it looks that way. How is this growing me? What is opening up? What's healing? I don't know. Is that helpful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's really like that question of, does everything happen for a reason, or does everything happen and we give it a reason? But then it's like, does it really matter? It's like, what empowers you?
Yeah. I mean, I just feel as though at this point, I think that's one of the most challenging parts of creation, is looking at like, yeah, it's all our creation, all the time. And it means we get to discover how powerful we are.
Yeah. And I think it's like easier to look at your own life and be like, oh, yes, of course, I manifested everything, the good and the bad. And it's like so much easier to take ownership. But then when you see difficult things happening to your friends, and other people, you're like, how is this happening to them? Like, they're a good person. Like, they don't deserve this. But then I think it's like, our humanity never wants to think that anyone ever manifested something bad. And that's what causes us to question.
Yeah. The Sophia Code declares that we are holy, not just good, holy, for over 300 pages. But we choose to become human, I think partly to keep things a little humble for our divinity. Because if you are all powerful divinity, having an experience like being human with seeming limitations, with the bumps and bruises, and yes, the absolute heartbreak sometimes of being human, there is a soul growth there that has been going on for eternity. Otherwise, souls wouldn't keep incarnating into form. And it's not about, this is a good person, so bad things shouldn't happen to them. It's just like, who are we to say? Like, I've had the most horrible things that could ever happen to someone, and I've gone on to serve thousands of people because of what I chose to do with it. So, yeah, I think that's a level of, no one has to like it, but it is a part of what I teach about, which is spiritual maturity. It's just like, it does take time though to identify like, no, everything is here for me. It's not against me. And yeah, it's a big one to wrestle with. It's nice to talk about it. Thanks for speaking it. And because I know a lot of people wrestle with that all of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend right now who's going through a really tough time. And I keep thinking, I'm like, how could this be happening to this person? And it's a really hard pill to swallow, to be like, that's just their lesson. It's like, the mother archetype in me is like, no, I want to help them and then save them, alleviate the world from suffering. And I think that's also like what makes us goddesses in human form, is like our desire to also try to do what we can to help.
Of course. And I think even just like, maybe even like softening around the word lesson, because sometimes we'll see things happen and it's like, it's going to stimulate the greatest healing and release from maybe like 25 lifetimes of trauma. Sometimes it just takes that one final lifetime where you're like, I am done with this story. And so, yeah, I think I just want to be careful with that word, because I feel as though we judge ourselves so harshly for our learning curve. And it's like, to have the courage to even come here and be willing to learn from these extremes, it deserves like all our compassion.
Do you think right now there has been a call for a certain type of soul to incarnate on this planet?
Definitely, don't you?
Yes.
Especially over the past 100 years, particularly. I feel as though it's really important for the souls that are here right now to find each other, the ones that need each other, that are, it's like, what's so unique about the souls coming in is because they are so unique, they tend to self-isolate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's really important for like-minded, heart-centered souls to find each other and be in community with one another, whether online, hopefully in person, get out from behind a screen, and connect. We need each other.
Absolutely. Community, sisterhood, feeling each other's frequency is so needed. And I feel like, especially after the past 2 years, it's like putting that extra effort into. And I think it's hard sometimes when you are spiritual, when you're an empath, you feel so much that it can make you very sensitive to other people. So then it's like you go out and I don't know, sometimes you like feel so much about a person that it's like very overwhelming, that it's like easier to just be on your own, where you can kind of like just bask in your own aura. That what advice do you have for people that it's like maybe just hard for them to connect with people? They get very exhausted easily, or it's just hard for them to find people that they feel genuinely comfortable with.
Oh my God. I used to not be able to leave the house without, I don't know, maybe 5 pounds of crystals on me. It was so uncomfortable to be in public or be around anyone, even spiritual people. So I can really relate to that. It was really my mentorship with the Ascended Masters and completing the divine genome activations and the Sophia Code that changed my life forever. It was surrounding myself in a field of sovereignty that re-educated me, helped me to reclaim my own sovereign body, my own sovereign psychic centers. And I call in that circle of empowerment every day with the 8 directions. I do it a lot on YouTube with everyone that watches my daily. And you can just feel it. You can feel the energy clear out. And so if you claim the sovereignty of your body consciously and your emotions and your psychic centers, you can receive the love from others, but it's like this force field of light, invincible light, that doesn't allow you to take on the negativity or even just the excitement of others. Sometimes people just get really excited and they just energy dump. There's just such a lack of education about how people can keep their energy to themselves, like just circulating in their own body. And so, without judgment, it's just about when you claim your own sacred space, which is your body. Ultimately, your sacred space is your body. Of course, it's your home, your office, your temple, but it starts with your body. And the more you claim that consciously, ask for help with your guardian angels and guides, you can start to interface with people in a way that is more regenerative. Being able to speak what you need, speak your boundaries with greater clarity without worrying about how someone might respond to that or react to that. That's the energy of sovereignty. When you're doing you can let other people do them. And that lets everyone off the hook. No one has to be responsible for taking away your energy or sucking your energy. It's just like, did you call in your higher self? Did you sit in your circle of empowerment first and then go out? And from that space, you get to love people exactly as they are, not as you would have them to be. Because that's not real empowerment, to try to twist someone's arm to be a certain way so you'll feel comfortable at a party or a spiritual gathering. That's actually called codependency. Your higher self is sovereign. And so as you practice embodying your higher self with the Ascended Masters and your angelic guides, you get to enjoy life and others more, and most importantly, yourself. So it creates a space within your body and your circle of light to be more playful, be more of who you really are, not care so much what other people think.